and as President of the Baldwin Council of PTAs, I would like to welcome you to our annual Legislative Forum. May we please rise at this time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In the event of an emergency, and if we must evacuate the building, you may do so through the doors on your right, turn right, and proceed to exit the building into the parking lot. As in the past, this evening's forum promises to carry on a Baldwin tradition of open communication and shared commitment, addressing concerns for our schools, our children, and our community. The Baldwin Council of PTAs has continued this commitment by bringing together school district administrators, school board members, and our elected legislators to this unique event. We are here to bring to the attention of our invited guests the concerns that we have as individuals and as a community regarding the future of our schools and town. The Baldwin community takes pride in the quality of our programs and the overall educational success of all our children. That success is being threatened by the proposed state budget. Even amid the most dismal financial circumstances and a political environment in which disagreements about the way forward appear to outweigh common ground, it is a known fact that our nation's knowledge-based economy demands that we provide young people of all backgrounds and circumstances with the education and skills necessary to become knowledgeable, innovative, and productive citizens. Americans are committed to the principle that in order to thrive in the future, we must prepare students today by giving them the skills necessary to navigate life and careers in the age of global competition. The proposed school budget is yet again another year of decreased state aid, a mandatory tax cap law, and unfunded mandates. And for the next couple of years, as the tax cap place, it will bring forth school budgets that will be challenging, to say the least. And this, of course, has created an effect of unintended consequences on our schools, our home, and most importantly, our children. Many parents approached me after our parent academy last week asking, what can we do as parents? What can we do as residents? And I say, get involved. Get involved in your child's school, join the PTA, attend the Board of Education meetings, and participate in community events. Take your time to cast your ballots for the budget and referendums. Legislatively, you can write letters to your elected officials and or participate in the New York State PTA's annual writing campaign in Capwiz. Because when we raise our voices as part of Nassau Region PTA, we are 97,000 strong. New York State PTA, which is the oldest and largest child advocacy group in the U.S., recently testified to the New York State Education Reform Commission on Family Engagement, acts that were implemented recently to encourage and support the role of family involvement. All data points to the fact that parent involvement results in greater student success. So you have taken the first step tonight by attending this forum, and I thank you. Our children are our future, they are our highest priority, and they are the leaders of tomorrow. And by continuing our collaboration, we will be successful in that endeavor. Because that is the true mission of PTA. Advocacy is the heart of our mission, and vision for every child, one voice. We're delighted that our invited guests have felt it very important to be with us this evening, to share their views and to hear our concerns. With us, seated on the dais are, from the United States Congress, I'm not sure if this person is here, Pierre Smalls, Community Liaison, representing U.S. Congress. Okay, not here yet. Okay, let's move on. And I know Brian Coran will be late, but he will be joining us. He is? Oh, there he is. Oh, just in the nick of time. So joining us, as we see now, is New York State Assemblyman Brian Coran. Sarah Hawley, representing State Senator Charles Fischello and State Senator Majority Leader Gene Skelos. From the Nassau County's District Office, District Attorney Kathleen Rice, and Chief of Administration to the District's Office, Jeffrey Stein. From our Nassau County Legislator, representing Legislator Kevon Abrams, is Executive Director Robin Wheat. And from the town of Hempstead, I'm not sure, but we will be expecting Councilman Anthony Centino and Councilwoman Dorothy Goodsby. From the Baldwin Union Free School District, we have with us tonight Dr. James Mapes, Superintendent of Baldwin Schools, Kim Taylor, President, Board of Education, and Christopher Greer, President, Baldwin Teachers Association. Now at this time, I call Dr. Mapes, our Superintendent of Schools, for his remarks.
Thank you. And thank you to the PTA Council for once again sponsoring this forum and for the opportunity that it gives us to both question and have dialogue with the legislators who represent us. Now, this is a critical year for many of us, as those of you who have attended the budget work sessions are aware. Like many other districts of similar wealth and poverty levels, Baldwin is struggling to continue to provide high-quality programming for the students and the community while making up locally and reasonably for shortfalls in state dollars. While mandates continue to pile up with no funding for implementation, and state support dwindles, and costs outside the control of the school board, such as health care and retirement, increase by large amounts, the board and the community is forced to deal with tax levy caps and caps in the growth in state aid. Added to this is an inadequate funding formula for the distribution of state dollars. Coupled with that is a system for going above the cap, which penalizes some voters while favoring others. Reality is, the share of the cost of educating children is shifting, for many of us, from the state to the local taxpayer. Baldwin, like many other districts, is at a crossroad. One path in that road takes us to ever fewer services, a state-mandated curriculum with few, if any, non-required opportunities for students, a place where students come to school in the morning, go home in the afternoon, and have no place to go after that, a place where property values decline because the education system is characterized by lack of opportunity, or the other road, where the community takes a deep breath and decides to preserve what exists. And we know in this community that it will take 4 years of cap overrides to get to the point of safety once again for our budget. The decision facing Baldwin is not an easy one, but it's a critical one. So it's time to cast away political expediency and begin real dialogue with our legislators that's focused on the critical issues we face in Baldwin, on Long Island, and across the state of New York. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mapes. I will now call on Ms. Kim Taylor, President of the Baldwin Board of Education, for her remarks.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the PTA Council for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. Nearly 20 years ago, I decided to begin a new life on Long Island. I did not yet have children, but chose to purchase my home in Baldwin primarily based on its outstanding school district. Baldwin has always been proud to offer its students a well-rounded educational experience, including a vast array of AP courses, championship-level sports teams, an award-winning school-to-career program, a cutting-edge academy program, as well as arts and music programs that are nationally recognized. Graduation rate is the hallmark of a great district, and ours, at 98%, speaks to that fact. our seniors get scholarships to prestigious universities throughout the country. Despite the ever-increasing pressure on the Baldwin School Board to do more with less, we have tried our very best to preserve the signature programs that help our students to get into the very best colleges. Over the past few years, the Baldwin community has been asked to be understanding of the necessity to make significant sacrifices as we lose our ability to make ends meet due to mandates and regulations over which we have no control. It has become increasingly more difficult to run our district in a way that supports our students and offers them the kind of education that they and the community are accustomed to and have every right to expect. As we are all painfully aware, Baldwin is faced with yet another tough year as we contend with state aid that has been flat or reduced for the past several years, depleted reserves, unfunded mandates, and a tax cap that is slowly eating away at our educational program. We have been forced to close schools, increase class size, eliminate extracurricular activities, and reduce staff on all levels. Baldwin, like many other districts across Long Island, is now being forced to make cuts that impact the very heart of our educational program. We have done our job. We have made efficiencies, cut back, trimmed, reduced, and eliminated programs. Now we need the help of our legislators to help save the very programs that make us competitive in the global market. We need significant mandate relief. The majority of our budget is made up of personnel retirement and insurance costs. Rein in the dramatic rate increases that drive up district costs to levels that are unsustainable. Allow districts to establish a TRS reserve fund. Refund the enormous cost incurred to implement APPR. Make state aid distribution truly appropriate for upstate and downstate school districts. When it comes to state funding, school districts need predictability and stability. Repeal the Triborough Amendment so that employers and employees can work together to achieve labor contracts that are fair. The Baldwin School Board has done everything in its power to continue to provide a high-quality education to all of its students. The Baldwin taxpayer recognizes that maintaining strong schools not only prepares our children for a rapidly changing world, it also supports our strong community and our robust property values. We have done our share, and now we turn to you, our legislators, to make these substantial changes needed to help keep our schools among the greatest in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. I will now call on Mr. Christopher Greer, President of the Baldwin Teachers Association, for his remarks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Christopher Greer, and I'm the president of the Baldwin Teachers Association. I'm not a politician, but like you, I am a public servant. I'm here on behalf of my members, the dedicated professionals who go above and beyond the call of duty each and every day for the children of this community. I'm also committed to serving the people of this community, which has served as my second home. My members include teachers, psychologists, social workers, guidance counselors, teaching assistants, and school nurses. I came here tonight to speak from the heart and to do my best to make sure that I share with you just some of the many concerns and feelings my members have with regard to the tax cap. It's almost like the same story here that we're going through, but the inequitable distribution of state aid, which I know that Assemblyman Curran is also a proponent of. I've seen the video, it's excellent. And the drastic increases in high-stakes testing. I'm also speaking to you as a constituent, parent, teacher, and fellow taxpayer. I call on you, our elected representatives, to push back in any way you can against this incredibly unfair tax cap law, especially the highly undemocratic 60% supermajority vote. I also call on you to try whatever you can to fix this broken state aid formula and work to help us end the state's obsession with these high-stakes tests. Currently, Nassau and Suffolk County educate about 18% of the students in this state. yet we only receive about 12% back in state aid. We, the taxpayers of Long Island, end up subsidizing the education of the rest of the state. I believe we deserve our fair share. Now that we have lived through the tax cap for 2 full years, the warnings that were raised at the time the legislation became a reality is showing. The damage that has been done to New York State's once proud public education system is nearly complete. Anyone can use statistics to prove an argument. Every person in this room is intelligent enough to recognize that if you skew or interpret the data in a certain way, you can claim to prove just about anything. Governor Cuomo skewed the data, and he convinced you, our elected officials, that the public education system in New York State was failing. That was a misrepresentation of the facts. In fact, before Governor Cuomo's so-called educational reforms, namely the tax cap and radical increases in high-stakes testing, we actually led the country in education. I can tell you as a teacher, a parent, and a taxpayer that we have lost that lead. Now it seems every day I read in the newspaper that one school or another is planning to cut a certain number of educator positions or eliminate, even ask parents to pay for extracurricular activities such as sports, music, art, and clubs. Even kindergarten is a target. 2 generations of educational research has taught us that rigorous pre-kindergarten programs are essential to student achievement, yet many schools are being forced to look at cutting kindergarten because it's not state mandated. I don't see how that makes any sense. I don't see how that makes New York State better. And the worst part of it all is that these cuts are absolutely necessary just to avoid presenting a budget that would exceed the tax levy limit. So districts all over the state are laying off educators and support staff in numbers we've never seen. They're increasing class sizes, they're eliminating classes, programs and activities are being eliminated and stripped down, everything that provides a sound, basic, well-rounded education for our children. And when you combine all those cuts and programs that make school a balanced experience and increase testing to ridiculous amounts, who in their right mind could tell me that New York State has improved? I don't think anybody in this room could. I'd also like to share my personal experience as a father. I know many of you in this room can relate to this. My daughter, Sophie, she's in kindergarten. She happens to be in the West Babylon School District. And just like Baldwin, last year, West Babylon was looking to cut full-day kindergarten. They really had no choice. And I was hoping that we would save full-day kindergarten here in Baldwin, which we did, thankfully. But I was prepared to see, I don't even know if it's possible, to pay to send my child to Baldwin, because I knew she would get an excellent education here. Luckily for my family, not to mention my wallet, the West Babylon, like Baldwin, was able to save kindergarten. With that being said, I must admit I'm absolutely blown away by how much she's learning in kindergarten. I'm also blown away by the amount of testing she has. She comes home and tells me, oh, I had a substitute. Why? Because I was testing. I had to take this test. It's multiple days. I hate to tell you, it's no different here in Baldwin. It's no different in any school across this state. Now, I'm more than satisfied, and I'm a teacher. I'm more than satisfied with her education. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know many parents that I've talked to, they feel the same way. We don't need some testing company that's making millions of dollars in profits off of an unnecessary test to tell me that my daughter Sophie has learned far more than I did when I was in kindergarten. Let's not forget that we, along with generations before us, turned out just fine without testing. Seriously though, Sophie comes home reciting multiple new sight words every day. She's able to sound out almost any new word, and unfortunately, you parents will understand this one, That means the days of my wife and I being able to spell out words so she can't understand what we're saying are almost behind us. So I'm a little sad about that. But really my point is, why should our district, why should our community, why should any district be forced to spend money that we don't have on tests that we clearly don't need, and in the process cut programs that are absolutely essential to having our children receive a balanced education? I just don't understand it. Baldwin's just one of the many districts that have been seriously harmed by the tax cap. Last year, even after the teachers agreed to take 2 years of pay freezes to do our part to help out, we lost many teachers. This year, we're looking at a 7% budget that will exceed the tax cap and will need that undemocratic supermajority vote. We're going to lose even more teachers even if that passes. At this point, we're losing teachers and support staff who made a career commitment to Baldwin. And they planned their lives about being dedicated employees of Baldwin. We know we could now be talking about teachers with over 10 years of service in this district. Now these teachers and support staff will be forced to try to find another job in a market that's completely saturated with all the rest of the excess teachers on Long Island. I'm not saying that you, the community, shouldn't have the right to vote on how much you're willing to pay for an education. But some people have commented to me about this supermajority clause and how it is reminiscent of the 3/5 compromise of the Civil War era, where some votes counted more than others. And I just don't understand it. Additionally, all due respect, if 50% plus 1 is good enough to elect our local officials, why isn't it good enough to pass the budget? Don't worry, I'm almost done. Thanks. A little nerve-wracking over here. I'm committed to the Baldwin community. I really am. I care deeply for each of my students, just like all of my fellow teachers, which I see some friendly faces out there, and administrators, and the Board of Ed. We're all committed, absolutely committed to these children. That's why I chose to make my career here in Baldwin. I planned never to leave till I retire. Unfortunately, if these cuts continue, I probably won't make it to retirement in Baldwin. I'll be walking the unemployment line along with many of my close friends and colleagues, some of which have already walked that line. But I can honestly say if that happens, I will be heartbroken. But it's not because my career or my family's been destroyed by these cuts. It's because the children I have served and I dedicated my life to have lost something they're never going to get back. And that's a high-quality education. Everyone in this room, my members, and I, we elected you because we believe that you care. You care about this community. And you committed yourself to protecting it. I'm only asking that you live up to your promise and do everything you can to help us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greer. Now at this time, I would like to introduce our host for this evening, the Executive Committee of the Baldwin Council of PTAs. Please stand and remain standing until all are introduced. First, Vice President Josie Diaz. See her walking in the back. Third, Vice President Susan Briggs. I don't think she's here yet. Recording Secretary Lori Fitzpatrick at the door. Corresponding Secretary Lauren Riggs, our timekeeper. And I don't see Jenny, but we want to thank also Jenny Moore is our treasurer. And our immediate past president, Avis Dyer. I want to thank them for their extraordinary support and dedication to the children of the Baldwin School District. Our special thanks to Mario Simmons, our second VP of Legislation, for coordinating this forum. And I will now turn over the program to Mr. Simmons.
Good evening. Format for the evening will be as follows. Each representative will have an opportunity to address the audience. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes for opening remarks.
After 4 minutes, the timekeeper will raise a sign to let you know that you have 1 minute remaining. After the allotted time, the bell will ring. At that time, we ask that you finish your sentence and conclude your remarks. The question and answer period will begin after all speakers have had a chance to address the audience. The first elected official to speak will be Nassau District Attorney Kathleen Rice.
Thank you very much, Mary. I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I'm going to speak very fast because I don't think I've ever said anything for 5 minutes, so bear with me. I haven't been before this group ever. I was first elected in 2006. I had spent my career as a state and federal prosecutor, and there were really 3 very simple reasons why I ran for DA. First, I wanted to be the DA in the county where my family was raised, where I was raised with my 9 brothers and sisters, and where many of my siblings and my 88-year-old father still live. I felt that the office could better handle crimes that were happening here, like DWI, public corruption, technology crime, violent crime. And the third reason was to allow you to have a public official who could be held accountable. And how do public officials allow themselves to be held accountable? They come to events like this, they tell you what they're doing, and they answer questions, and they get ideas, and there is a visibility that allows you to know what I'm doing so you can hold me accountable. So where have we been over the past 7.5 years in this, almost 7.5 years in the DA's office? We have become the national leader on the issue of DWI. There is no question about that. That crime is not looked at the same way as it was before I became the DA. It is an epidemic, and I'm going to continue to treat it as such. More violent criminals are being convicted after trial and are getting stiffer upstate prison sentences because that's where they belong. More public officials who betray the public trust are being arrested and prosecuted. There was one recent conviction we just had that you probably read about in the paper. More of those cases than has ever been made ever in the history of this county. And we are doing really innovative things with the #1 rising crime that there is, and that's internet crime, identity theft, cyber predators, all the things that we read about every day in the paper. But the thing that I am most proud of in my work as DA is that every single successful initiative that we have done has been successful for one simple reason. We have reached out to the community, various different advocacy groups, and we have asked them to partner with us, whether it's our gun buyback program or the initiative we did in the village of Hempstead or any other initiative that we've done. And that's why they have been successful. So I want to speak specifically to the group here because your main concern is education, as it is for me. I was very fortunate to have parents who placed a high premium on education for all 10 of their children. There was no excuses, boy or girl, it didn't matter. Because everyone knows that giving a quality education to every single child, which is their God-given right, is the key to them having a successful and happy life. There is no question about it. So there are 3 areas that I focused on. The first being education-based programs, where we go into the high schools and the grammar schools, and we talk about things like drunk driving and the drug epidemic, and how to deal with cyber issues like sexting and cyberbullying. All of what we try to do is give parents, educators, administrators, but most importantly, the kids, the tools that they need to make the right decisions. Because we know that kids don't make decisions like we do. Their brains aren't fully developed. So these educational programs are unprecedented, and I can't tell you how successful they have been and how much positive feedback we have gotten. And I simply could not have done that without the cooperation of all the schools that have invited us in to do these programs. So that's #1. #2, I don't know if you read recently, but I am pushing an initiative now to ensure that our schools remain a safe environment for kids to learn. You can talk all you want about the quality of an education, but if kids are afraid to go to school because there are drug dealers in school or they're being bullied in school, they don't even get past the goal line, okay? The start line. So what I have done is sent a letter to the head of the Department of Education asking that we make this system of reporting incidents that happen in schools more comprehensive, so that we can identify schools that have issues, put resources toward those schools, and ensure that every child has a safe, protected environment in which to learn. #2. #3, We made national news once again in our handling of the SAT scandal, and the reason why that case was so important is because what was happening was that cheaters, kids who weren't playing by the rules, were taking spots from kids who were playing by the rules and being honest. You cannot have a system where that is the way it works. We needed to level the playing field. So what we did was prosecute not just the test takers, but the test payers, because without the test payers, there is no test taker. And what we also did beyond that prosecution was work with the administrators of both the SATs and the ACTs to ensure that there was a better system of security that would not allow this kind of criminal impersonation to go on again. Those security procedures were implemented last September, and all those tests now, these kids, from the time that they apply, 30 seconds, I got you. I'm waiting for the cane to come, right? So anyway, be that as it may, it's a much better system now, and we're sending the message to kids that cheating doesn't pay. Because if you want to know who the future Bernie Madoffs are, or who the future public officials are who are going to betray your trust, that's who they are. And we have to make the system fair for all. I wish I could stay longer. I'm going to step down before you raise that sign, young lady. And I want to thank you all so much for hearing me.
Next, we'll hear from New York State Assemblyman Brian Kern.
Good evening, everyone. You know, Kathleen said she wasn't going to use the full 5 minutes. I'm telling you, I'm not. I know you guys have a lot of questions for me, so I want to get right to it. But before I do that, I did want to start off by saying something, and that is, you know, 4 months ago, South Baldwin was devastated by Hurricane Sandy. And I have to compliment not only the school district, Dr. Mapes and his administration on stepping up, but also the teachers of Baldwin. I will tell you, within the first 7 days of the storm, we set up, with the cooperation of your school district, we set up a water, food, and material distribution center down at Meadow. And we started walking the homes in Bay Colony and the harbor with the National Guard. And while we were walking out there, we saw teachers going door to door as well to provide with supplies and food to the people. So I have to tell you, I really do believe that they deserve a big round of applause, both the administration and the teachers, for what they did. Real quick, like I said, I know you have a lot of questions, but as surprising as it may be, I don't believe that we're going to disagree on a lot of the things that you're going to ask me. Specifically, listen, state aid, we're in the same exact position as we were last year. Actually, we're in a better position this year, but it's still not a good position. Last year, we were in Baldwin, I forget the exact numbers, Mary Jo, I forget what they were, but we were significantly in the red after the governor's proposed budget. And after negotiations and under the final budget, we got a huge amount of money restored to Baldwin, which then led us out of the red and back to the black. But we're back at the same spot this year. Under the governor's proposed budget right now, what he did is, usually the formula, which is inherent, and you heard from Mr. Greer, it is inherently unfair to Nassau and Suffolk schools. As they said, we send up about 18% of the monies to Albany for state education. We only get back historically 12%. It's inherently unfair because they deem us high wealth districts. So we're back at that point where we're fighting for our money again this year. And what the governor did in his proposed budget directly affect Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester schools. The formula is comprised of all different factors and formulas, but there was this given line in the formula called high tax aid. And the high tax aid is specifically geared for those districts within Nassau and Suffolk because your property taxes are so high. Well, what he did this year was significantly decrease the high tax aid, which directly decreased the amount of aid that all Nassau and Suffolk schools were going to get. So right now, that's where the fight is. And I know Mrs. Holly's going to get up here and she's going to hand out a sheet which encourages you, and I encourage you to call the governor's office as well to restore that high tax aid. But what I would also ask you to do is, what we have been doing is we have an online petition to present to the governor to restore our fair share here in Nassau and Suffolk and present that. And I think we're up to 2,000 signatures, but we need more, and we should have more, because this happens every single year. And until we show that we're serious, that we have the numbers, that we're going to go out there and fight for our fair share, we're going to go through this every single year. I know we're getting close to the 5 minutes, so just on the other things. Mandates, you're absolutely right. Albany and Washington has had a very bad habit of telling you, the school district, what to do and how to do it. But unfortunately, what they have been doing is telling you how to do it and what to do, but not giving you any money for it. Your budgets are consumed by mandates. We have to give you mandate relief. We have a couple of proposals on the table that's going to give you mandate relief, and I'm hoping that you're going to ask me some of those questions. But the funny thing about it is when a lot of the politicians are saying, hey, listen, we need to give mandate relief, they passed the biggest mandate down to you, which is APPR. Now everybody said, listen, our teachers needed to be tested. Well, I have to tell you, our teachers here in Nassau and Suffolk didn't need to be tested. Our education here in Nassau and Suffolk doesn't need that, nor does it need any system in place to get rid of the teachers, because we have administrators here that took care of that. That's why I voted against APPR. That's why, at the very least, like I said, I hope somebody asked me about this, but there should be an offset to the tax cap for the design and implementation, because I'm pretty sure it's costing Baldwin somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 or more to implement APPR. So if we're going to force that very horrible system on you, then we should at least be giving you some type of financial offset to that. But again, somebody asked me about that. And lastly, real quick, I agree with you. There's too much testing in today's schools. And the reason why, here's the thing. The reason why is when people chase federal money, when you chase the dollar, when you go after Washington for race to the top and no child left behind, you lose your local control. They all put mandates on you. They put requirements. That's where all this testing comes from. So the next time somebody comes to you and says, hey, listen, federal government has all this money, we can get it. Well, you know what? Stop and think about what you're giving up, because nothing is free in this world. And if you're going to take their money, there's requirements that are coming down. And we have to remember that for the future. My time's up, and I'm sorry, because I lied to you, too. I said I wasn't going to take 5 minutes. But ask me questions that I want to answer. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from the Executive Director for Legislator Kevon Abrams, Robin Weed.
I'm afraid to guarantee that 5 minutes just in case. But I am Robin Wheat, Legislative Assistant, Executive Director to the Minority Caucus, to Minority Leader Kevon Abrams. And it is a pleasure for me to be here tonight, and I apologize that he is not here, but he had a very busy schedule. I came to represent him and all the county issues that we have. Many people think that the county represents a lot of the more local or school and everything else, but most of what we do is making laws as well as county roads and streets and different things like that. So we don't have so much of the infrastructure as the town of Hempstead has. And speaking of the town of Hempstead, Councilwoman Goolsbee would have loved to have been here tonight, but her husband is in the hospital, so she wasn't able to make it. So keep him in your prayers. And any questions that I can answer, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from Sarah Holley, representing New York State Senators Dean Skelos and Charles Fischillo.
All right, here we go again, right? The two senators I'm here representing, they had session. They changed the schedule that Monday and Tuesday were not in session, and yesterday and today they're in session, so they apologize for not being here. All right, I'm going to give you some numbers, and here we go. I don't consider them great. I know the two senators don't either. The Assemblyman talked about high tax aid. High tax aid was put in many, many years ago for Long Island school districts so they could put money into the districts. High tax, because we always looked wealthy, and we know we're not. The governor took away $50 million. $50 million of high tax aid. 37 million of that came from Long Island. That's a lot of money. That's got to be restored, and your two senators, along with the assemblymen, are working hard to restore that. There's also something, we were talking about Sandy. I heard the assemblyman talk about Sandy. Sandy has had an effect also. Besides people being out of, their homes, there's a thing called the McKinney-Vento Act. I'm quite sure your superintendent and board are aware of it, which says that any child who's displaced has to be provided transportation up to 50 miles. Now, some school districts have really been hammered. We need to have the number from the Baldwin School District and how that affects you. All right? We have one school district that's been hit with $500,000 extra just in transportation. All right, let's talk about the governor's proposal. And I know that Brian talked about it. You people have got to talk to the governor. You really do. This is his proposal. He's got to hear from you. He really has to hear from you. We have a flyer here. It'll be at the door. Take it. Give it to your friends. There's plenty of them. Either email him, call him, write him. But he's got to hear from you. And he's not hearing that much from you. Long Island has got to come forward and say, okay, we've had it. We've had it. And Governor, we're not wealthy. And when you take the high tax aid, which has 3 steps to it, step 1, step 2, and step 3, and you eliminate step 3, which really is mostly us, and you take 1 and 2 and say, oh, I'll divide that up. That's how we got shafted. And we really got shafted. Let's talk about Baldwin. Baldwin lost $433,343 in high tax aid. That's money that is lost. You've got to get it back. You've got to ask the governor. You lost a little bit in transportation aid. Your bottom line, you got a 0.56% increase in the governor's proposal. You didn't even get 1%. And he's talking about that he's giving state aid up to 4%. Where's the 4%? Where's the 4% for Baldwin? Where's the 4% for the Nassau County School Districts and Suffolk? You must find the time and take the time to let him know how you feel. We need help. And we desperately need help. Okay? Thank you.
We're going to move on to the next part of our format. Please take note that when asking questions, please stand, state your name, address, and to whom your question is directed. Questions should be brief and to the point. Speakers will have 2 minutes for their reply. When the timekeeper raises the sign, there will be 30 seconds remaining for the reply. Other speakers may then answer the same question and are limited to a 1-minute reply. In order to allow as many questions to be answered as possible in the limited amount of time we have, cross-debate from the floor isn't permitted. Please listen carefully to the questions that are asked in order to avoid repeating the same question. If an answer to a previous question is unclear to you, you may ask a follow-up question. However, we ask that you specify what part of the answer you need to be clarified. No questions will be taken after 9:30 p.m. Okay, I'll open the floor to questions. Ma'am? Yes.
Hi, Laura Curran, no relation, 1590 Berkeley Avenue. It's been estimated, and this is directed to Ms. Holly and Mr. Curran, it's been estimated that about 100 school districts in the state will become insolvent over the next year or two because of the cap and the cuts in aid. And I'm wondering if there's a plan, if you've heard of a plan in Albany, of what will happen to these districts when they do, if they do, and when they become insolvent.
I wish you would have known. Let me just start. Listen, the question revolves around the tax cap. And as we discussed last year, I'm a supporter of the tax cap. And let me tell you why. there are, everybody in this room, including myself, Mrs. Holly, and everybody else, wants the best possible education that we can give our kids and that we can afford. There's also competing interest right now. There's also a competing interest that we cannot ignore, and that is the fact that foreclosure rates here in Nassau County are on the rise. Nassau County is number one in the state in foreclosures. That is a real problem that we cannot ignore. So, is the tax cap the panacea solution to that problem? Absolutely not. It was a solution that was brought up to slow the rate of increase in property taxes, to try to help people stay in their homes. That's the reason why I voted for it. Should the tax cap be looked at after this year or after next year, after 3 years of implementation? Absolutely. Should there also be extensions onto exemptions that are added? The tax cap actually is a formula where it determines your tax levy and what you can actually raise your taxes by. And in that formula, there are certain things that you can take off and figure out what you can raise your taxes to. Some of the things are lawsuits and other things. But those, there should be an additional list or additional items added to that. Some of the things, like I already said, is the implementation, the costly implementation of APPR should be added to that. Also, although this was one that I kept talking about, but with regards to the school districts, it was good news yesterday. It was the cost of certiorari's that you guys were going to have to assume. With the court decision, for those of you who do not know, there was a court decision yesterday that actually said that the county can't overturn that guarantee, and it's back on the county's desks. But there's things like that that the tax cap should be looked at and revisited. But let me just real quickly, for those of you who think the tax cap is not working, again, remember the purpose behind the tax cap is to keep people in their homes. In my district, which was the old 14th district, we did an analysis of the year before and the year after the tax cap. In the year before and the year after, it was approximately a 1.4% decrease in the tax increase of all the school districts within that district. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but for a person who's struggling to keep their mortgage afloat, it means a lot. It does. And I understand that this has an adverse effect on the school district, and I know that. If I ever gave that impression that I don't know that, then it was a bad night for me, because I understand that. The whole idea is, I'm getting there, the whole idea was when I voted for this, what I wanted to see was that state aid, when we cleared up our books, we had $10 billion in the hole the first year that I got there. When we cleared up the books, which we're almost there, last year was $3 billion, this year we're just about there. The fact of the matter is, state aid should backfill whatever loss that you incur because of the tax cap. That was the idea between the tax cap. So the school districts really weren't losing money, but we had to clear up our books first, and we're accomplishing both funding our school districts and also keeping people in the homes. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry I went over.
Let me add one more thing to that, all right? They are taking a look, because there are some exceptions to the tax cap, all right? They are taking a look at some other items that school districts have complimented on, all right? So there is recognition that there needs to be some flexibility there, but the tax cap's not going to go away. It's there. It's there, and it was there to basically slow down the growth and spending. Because right now, I think every single one of us now is that the taxes here are killing us. They're really high. People are losing their houses. So right now, it's working. It's not going to go away this year, but they are taking a look at some of the exceptions.
Before we move on, if the other wants to be heard on that very issue.
I think that we can all agree that these are difficult times, but significant mandate relief and state aid was promised in order to make up for the loss of revenue from the tax cap. We have used our reserves. We don't have state aid. We don't have mandate relief. And I just need to know, what is the point in saving your home when the school district, which is the basis of your home's value, is destroyed? And I'm wondering that in that 3 years or more that we have to, before we take a look at the tax cap and the effect of it, what happens in that middle time, in that space between, when, we lose programs and we're down to a bare bones education, and we have no time to, and no way to get back the way we were before the tax cap was implemented. Thank you.
Gentleman in the striped shirt.
Yes, my name is Dan Levy. I live on Laurel Avenue between Atlantic and Pacific. I'm not a professional speaker, so you'll have to bear with me if I get a little nervous and discuss what I have on. First of all, like the rest of us, we read in the newspapers all of the cutbacks that we can look forward to in our school district. I mean, just the other night, we had a vote which is going to increase the distance children will have to walk to school, and all of this to save $1 million, all right? And obviously it was passed because people were affected by Hurricane Sandy. They're doing repairs to their homes. They have all these extra expenses, and we look forward to a school budget that's going to be increased again. Now, I have lived in this community for 45 years. I'm very happy to say my children went through this wonderful, wonderful school district with some excellent teachers. If I can brag, both of the boys went to Ivy League schools, and they're paying back their communities today, all right, and doing things as caregivers in the concern of other people, okay? We're talking about this country that needs a future generation that's well educated, and yet we're talking about cutting back on kindergarten classes where we know that the freshest minds and the most absorbent minds are those of young children in kindergarten classes and in first grade classes, okay? So to think about as a possibility, just is incomprehensible, but it is a possibility, okay? So when I absorb all of this and I think about the effect on all of us, okay, I say, well, since we have to face this reality, and I just heard from this person that there are 100 schools that are going to be going bankrupt, okay? All of us as individuals here are faced with the possibility of watching us go bankrupt because we know we would give as much as we could in increased school taxes to give our kids the best education we possibly can, all right? But we're willing to make those sacrifices as much as we possibly can. And for many of us, it really is economically painful, but we'll do anything for our kids, and rightly so. But the question that has to be asked here, all right, which hasn't been addressed, okay, which I just don't understand, because it has been asked in the newspapers and other media, okay? And it's really based on a very basic premise. Each of us, each of our kids want only one thing. We want a fair shake, right? Each of our graduates want to be able to go out and pursue positions which are based on our individual abilities. That's all we asked for, okay? Now we're faced with a situation that's been going on for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years that's based on an illegitimate premise which is causing this problem to take place. And that illegitimate premise is what our state legislature did to us in allowing some incorrect information to be given to them and never checking on it. And I'm referring to the fact that they allowed an actuary to sell them a bill of goods, which is resulting in the mandates for absorbent increases in pension costs and health care costs.
Sir, I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to ask you to, 1, ask the question, and 2, to tell us who you're directing it to.
Okay. So, again, I apologize for not being a professional speaker.
No need to apologize.
But I'm asking the question to both of our representatives. We expect our representatives and legislators to be honest and give us all a fair shake. The perception out here is We have people on the school board that are putting their time in. We have people like us who are interested, who are willing to put our time in, all right? We're not putting our time where it really counts. We should be putting our time to work together as a team, to put pressure on our representatives and legislators to correct this incredible wrong that's taken place years ago. So I leave it up to you.
I'm sorry, what was your first? Listen, you said you weren't a public speaker.
Yeah.
You did pretty good. Listen, real quick, you're absolutely right. But you're wrong. You're wrong in putting the blame on an actuary. Let me tell you who you could blame. You could blame the politicians and the elected officials. Because what happened was, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, when times were good, when everybody thought that there was going to be cash for years and years and years, they entered into pension systems that they couldn't afford. They couldn't afford it. And they didn't understand that at then because they thought that there was going to be every single year a 10% return on their investments. Listen, for everybody that doesn't know, the pension system, New York State, it's no different than any other pension system. It is heavily invested in Wall Street. When Wall Street goes down, then our pension system, the value of our pension system goes down as well. But what's different in New York State than other states is New York State is one of very few in which we're obligated by a court decision to fully fund our pension system. So when that pension system, because of Wall Street goes down, who do you think makes up the difference in that value of that pension? You guys, the taxpayers. That's why you guys have been getting crushed, both the municipalities and the school districts, for the last, probably the last 4 years, ever since 2008. But I think there was a breakthrough year in there where you didn't really get killed. But the bottom line is, we are starting to fix that. Last year, what we did was we created a new tier. We created a tier 6, which extended out the age in which you had to retire. It increased the contribution rate for the new employees. Now, the problem with that is, even under that new tier, you're not going to see the cost savings for that pension system, theoretically, for 20 to 25 years until those new employees retire. But what we're working on, and I know that you spoke about it before, where is the mandate relief? Here's one of the proposals that's going to be included in the budget, and I think a lot of people like this. It is to allow school districts and municipalities to cash in or to benefit off that new Tier 6 now, as opposed to waiting 25 and 30 years down the road. Basically, what this proposal will do is allow school districts to enter into an agreement with the state controller's office, where they agree for a 25-year period to enter into a set rate of contribution. Now, this year's contribution rate into the pension system is about 20%. This new plan is going to require school districts, 12.5% every single year. The cost savings for those municipalities are going to see right now. Of course, they're going to be paying it out for 25 years, and if Wall Street ever goes up, hey, listen, long term they might be paying a little bit more, they might be paying less, well, who knows? But it provides the relief now. But you're absolutely right. They entered into pensions that they could never possibly afford 10 years down the road, and you were right.
You're also right that the pension system, all the tiers are protected by the Constitution of the state of New York, and so consequently cannot be changed. Yes, sir.
Why don't we have a constitutional convention to change
That's the
the
only way
law?
you're going to be able to change it, is to have a constitutional.
Exactly. Well, what are we doing? Are there any advocates for a constitutional convention?
Yes, there is.
There are some, but not.
Not too many, right? We'd rather take it in the pocketbook and see our kids' educations go down the tube skirt.
Okay, any other questions? Claudia?
Your name and address. Claudia Rotundo, Baldwin Council Against Drug Abuse. My question goes to Robin. Where's my money? Still every year. I mean, this is, I'm waiting for the January advance. Tomorrow's March 1st. Last year, the January advance arrived March 23rd. The contracts last year went out before Thanksgiving, and we were promised that they would be earlier this year. They were sent out the week before Christmas with a return date of January 24th. If we're returning the contracts on January 24th, how do we get a January advance on January 1st? My agency was decimated in 2011. I am the agency, but I still need a paycheck. Today was my 4th payless payday. Where's my money? The whole system. Not a single substance abuse agency, and I can only speak for them, not a single substance abuse agency in Nassau County has gotten the contract back, verified. Every year, the language is the same, the agencies are the same. Why does it take so long for the controller's office to verify these things? Why does it take so long for us to get our money?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say, as they said, the person to call would probably be the county executive. His number is 571-3131. But
Do you know how
what I will
many
ask
of my
you to
letters
do-
are not answered?
No, what I will do though, if you call the office as we've done before, we will follow up to see if there's something that we can do to get you your funds or to see where they are or to track them down. But we don't have control over those areas. The best that we can do is to assist you in trying to get them and try to find out exactly why the contract was so late, find out if they're going to give advances this year. You know, Legislator Abraham fought very hard in restoring some of the funds that were being totally decimated from drug and alcohol, from youth court services, from whatever. So I'm sure that's part of the reason why the contracts went out late, because before they could work really hard to get it done, there was really no other way that you would get a contract because the money would have been gone. But as I said, please call the office tomorrow. I will be more than happy to research it for you and with you, and hopefully we can get you your funds, okay?
Gentlemen in black shirt.
Richard Valley, Coble Court, Baldwin. My question is to Dr. Mapes. Why is it called a union-free school?
Well, interestingly enough, it has nothing to do with unions. That's just a classification of school districts. There are some school districts, there are city school districts, there are central school districts, there are union-free school districts. It's just the way that we have in New York of naming school districts.
Back. Back there.
I have a question. Our children go to Baldwin School District, and I think our administrators and our teachers do a wonderful job. But I'm very disappointed as a parent with the condition of, we've been trying for the longest time, talking to Senator Stello's office, Senator Fischello's office, the town of Hempstead, about putting signs by the high school saying that there's a school here. The traffic is going at, phenomenal speeds all the time. There's been numerous accidents up there. We've contacted all branches of county government, of state government, and you start to feel like there's a trickle down that the kids are not being put first by our legislators on the state level and the county level. Right here on Grand Avenue. There is a state law that we were told that because the school is across the street, there is a state mandate that it cannot have a sign that there's a school here because the school is not on directly Grand Avenue. But the kids have to cross Grand Avenue to get to the school. And we have talked to the legislative aides of every office. And my son is a senior now. And he said, Mom, I hope as a legacy for the kids coming after Grand Avenue, improve the street lighting for the kids walking to and fro. Improve the sidewalks. There are things that we have sacrificed, but there are things that this community has been neglected. And it's time for us to get back some of our tax dollars. Grand Avenue from this point down to the southern state should be revitalized, the sidewalks and the lighting. We don't mind doing our part, but our kids have sacrificed enough in this district. And these mandates, as a parent of a high school student, when you have to get a tutor, when you have to buy books, besides paying your taxes. It's very expensive. But the least that I want is that when people are coming down this street, and a couple of times they have been coming right here by Dunkin' Donuts, there have been car accidents where the cars were overturned. During the hours the kids were walking to school, I took pictures on my camera so that we would have it. And when you call Executive Mangano's office, when you call Senator Skelos' office, when you call Senator Paschillo's office, when you call the national legislator, and no one's get back to you, where are the kids first in that? Besides the state funding, those are pragmatic things that we could do. Get a speed sign up here. You know, get a crossing guard, do something so that these kids are safe. There has been accidents where we've had almost we had a woman that was killed recently on Grand Avenue. And over one of the breaks about 2 years ago, a 17-year-old was hit on Grand Avenue and airlifted to Nassau County Medical Center. So I'm asking you, please, anyone that from the town of Hempstead, from county government, Kaman's office, from Executive Mangano, please put our kids first and do something about Grand Avenue. Even from the part of fixing Grand Avenue, where they're walking from school and there's proper lighting. It's so dark in some of those parts, in the Popeyes area, right here. In the wintertime at 5 o'clock, it's pitch black. So for the next generation of kids coming from K through 5, from the middle school, I would like to have that legacy that we actually did something as a body for our kids. Thank you.
Was that a question for the entire panel?
Yes, it's a prompt question because it's a state problem and a county problem, but they can work together. But there should be signs on Grand Avenue, if there is a school here, and also that it has speed capacity monitoring to show how fast they're going.
And we did receive your letter, and we responded back, but I guess I'm not sure what happened yet. We are working with legislator Scannell, because most of Baldwin belongs to legislator Scannell. Legislator Abrams has the far northern part of Baldwin and South Hempstead out there. But signage going down would be the town of Hempstead mainly. And then there's a county road. So we don't have any jurisdiction over that. We just have jurisdiction over the road. So the sidewalks and everything else really belong to the town of Hempstead. So there's some things that we can't do unless we get them to assist us. When we did something by Turnbull School in Uniondale, we had to get permission to be done to the town of the state who had to come in and make it a school-free zone. So that they can then change the speed limit and put signs up so that they can slow down because there's a school, approaching. And what we're going to also try to do is put speed indicators. So we can't put them up there as, it's just to be a speed indicator. It is not a speeding device, you know what I mean? So it's not one of the things where we can make it like a traffic light or what have you. It is just to really be there to show you how fast someone is going. And it's easier to do that when you have the school going at that point. So we're working with it, but.
Sir, you want to start?
Joel Press, 1600 Berkeley Avenue. I'm also the chairperson of the PTA Budget Advisory Committee. My question is to our two state representatives, pretty again. We talked about mandate relief. We've lost about $3 million in state aid over the last 4 years. At the same time, our contributions to the pension funds and medical insurance have gone up $10 million. That's a $13 million gap right there. And in the aggregate over 4 years, I did some math, math is right, that's a $33 million hole. We talk about mandate relief, flattening out the contributions to the pension funds. That, to me, that relieves us from having to pay for it now, but that just kicks the can down the road. I really want to know what real mandate relief, what things are you guys working on that we can say, okay, you don't have to do that, so you don't have to pay for it, instead of just kicking the can down the road and saying pay for it later.
Well, listen, with never come a time that you don't have to pay to the pension plan. There was a couple of years before 2008 where school districts and municipalities didn't have to pay because they were good years on Wall Street. But since 2008, I believe Controller DiNapoli came out and said that there will never be a year after that period where he will not be collecting some amount of money from school districts and municipalities to keep the fund going, just in case that should ever happen again. With regards to the pension proposal, I can't speak for the school districts or the municipalities. They can view the pension proposal any way they want. Some might say, hey, listen, we need the relief right now, which is the feeling behind the proposal. We need that 8% savings this year, and we'll need it next year or the next 5 years. And this is exactly what we need to give us that fiscal flexibility. Others might say, hey, listen, you're right. You know what? All we're doing is spanning out our payments for 25 years. What happens 10 years down the road if the economy gets better and Wall Street goes up and our actual payment rate into the system is less than 12.5? We'll actually be paying more. It's up to the individual school district to make that determination. With regards to other mandate relief, and it was said before, listen, Triborough Amendment. The Triborough Amendment, for anybody who doesn't know about it, is a section of the law that requires that even if a contract is expired, that people under that category can still collect their steps even if the contract is expired, which still, you know, even though there's a theoretical freeze on the salary line, they still have to incur these increases. The Triborough Amendment would say, hey, listen, if there is not a contract in force, then they're not guaranteed those wages, which theoretically would bring both parties to the table for meaningful conversations and discussions on negotiations. That's been discussed. The governor, however, we brought it to him. The governor has unfortunately said that he is not willing to discuss the Triborough Amendment. That is off the table and will not be discussed. Apart from that, we can still give you relief in other areas. Some of the areas that we've already talked about, but there should also be relief in set-offs for transportation costs, special education costs as well. And I want to stop.
Question here.
Chris Stewart, 962 Adams Street. The question is for Mr. Curran and his colleagues. So I also came here from the city looking for a better education for my kids. I now have 6. Okay. I've heard a lot about, you know, children in kindergarten, how much they're learning, what a great school district it is. And it is a great school district. But it's not just the academics that make it great. It's also the music programs, the art programs. Different children learn different. Yes, a couple of my kids are brilliant. A couple of them, not so much. All of this testing and testing. Today, my 9-year-old was very stressed out over testing. He thought it was the real thing. He's, oh, we're going into the real test today. But it's just continued practice testing. Okay? You talked about APPR and the federal mandate and how we bought into that. I want to know what we can do to turn that around, because there is no parent that I've spoken to who agrees with all of this testing. There's no teacher I've spoken to who agrees with the testing. And no one here is welcome. But even those who are stretching it are sending their kids to private schools so that they don't have to be a part of this testing, because a lot of those private schools are not a part of that. That is not an option for me. That is not an option for a lot of the families here who are barely in their homes from the storms. They can barely afford their taxes. What can we do to turn that around?
Let me answer that. Most of this testing that has come down the pike is from the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents are like the state school board. You have your own school board here, and then the state has what we call the Board of Regents. Your regent is Regent Roger Tillis. Regent Roger Tillis. I would highly recommend that you invite him to come to Baltimore. Meet with your people. Meet with you. Listen to you. Because you've got a diverse group here. Invite Roger Tillis to come. And I bet you he will come. But the tests are coming from the regents. Yes.
No, I'm just going to do this.
Any other questions? Ma'am?
Joan Flatley, 2286 Coventry Road, Baldwin. This is for our state legislators. We all know there's been a decrease in state aid, and we all would love to see an increase in state aid. However, there are many of us who don't feel that we're even getting our fair share of the 12% that comes back to Long Island. Baldwin is being penalized because we were a district that had 10 neighborhood schools. None of the elementary schools were built with a cafeteria. So because we don't have cafeterias, we don't have free and reduced lunch. What can we do, instead of just saying we'd love to see increased state aid, what can we do to not be compared to Manhasset and Jericho? And to recognize that we have some poverty levels in Baldwin. And I don't know whether we request that you use the free milk numbers or look at our income levels to determine the poverty levels in Baldwin and stop comparing us to wealthier districts because of the fact we have no one taking free or reduced lunch because we don't have a lunch program. I don't know what we have to do in the state to clarify that and not be penalized because of it.
And you're correct, just so everybody knows, one of the biggest factors in the determining of state aid is the federal free lunch program, how many kids a given area has. And like you said, Baldwin's at an extreme disadvantage based upon the fact that you don't have cafeterias in some schools. Well, what was what was a little nugget that we got put in last year was, and I'm not exactly sure how this could affect or help Baldwin, but a little nugget was that in a lot of these school districts, people who qualify, kids that qualify for the free lunch but don't sign up, they, under the budget, they were allowed, school districts were now allowed to declare those individuals who now qualify based upon, I guess it's their income level, without them actually enrolling in the program. So you actually
Do we have to have a program?
What's that?
Does a program have to exist?
Well, that's a great question. I never actually thought. I'll get you the answer tomorrow. But that was actually thrown in there so that it could help those districts. And I know that I researched it for one of my other districts for East Rockaway, where they actually had the program existed, but a lot of the kids refused to take the free lunch, and they couldn't declare those kids. Now, under this section, they could declare, but you know what? I'll look tomorrow to see whether or not, even if you don't have the program in place, whether you can declare those kids based upon their income levels and actually get an increase in the aid. Can I just say one thing, Bud? And this is my second year here, and I have to tell you, I just told Holly when I got here, you know, it's me and her on these. So, but I also just tell you what I feel and what I believe and what the reality of it is. And our educational formula is dictated by the Big Five. And for anybody who doesn't know that is kidding themselves. It's the Big Five school districts within the state. It is geared toward that, and the numbers reflect that in the aid. New York City gets $119 per student. The other upstate schools, they actually get somewhere in the neighborhood of $90 per student. Here in Nassau and Suffolk, it's $66. We are severely handicapped under this formula, and we have to try to change it. But until the numbers change, the assembly is city-based, it's Big Five-based. It is going to be very difficult to change, and I don't want to kid you and tell you something different than that. But we can work on trying to enhance your numbers for the free lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add one more thing on to that? Because we're talking about aid and Big Five and everything. I will tell you now that there is a coalition upstate. We often hear people talk about upstate and downstate, all right? There is a coalition that's formed upstate of school districts, superintendents, board people who are fighting for more aid. It has really become very, very big, and they're saying, look at Long Island. This is what you have going. You have an upstate, downstate, New York City. That's the reason you have to let them know how to do it. But there is a coalition, a big one, in upstate New York right now.
Sir?
I have to agree with everything Mrs. Flatley said regarding the school lunch program and how it takes aid. Ironically, when these schools were built, because they were looking at costs to put cafeterias in place, but afterwards, that became a measure of how much aid we got in Congress. But dealing with that is really, the truth is to change the formula, and that's just cutting up the pie in different things. The other things that we can do is deal with these mandates. Because we talked about APR, but there's also trickle down costs related to that. For instance, teachers, when we went to school, used to do grade regents exams. But because teachers are now being graded on how well the tests are, somebody said, oh, we can't trust the teachers to grade their own tests. So we have to contract out the grading of those tests to a private company, which adds more cost, that raises the cost that the school district has to pay, which they don't have the money to pay in the first place. So those are the types of things we can look at. Also, today, the Dow Jones and S&P 500 close to all-time highs, but we have paying for past years to build up the reserves that are already paid for just today. Medical, the same thing. I mean, the medical costs that are mandated are in the double digits. That was around $2 million well. You have to do something statewide to deal with medical. I mean, really, it's a very big problem. We have our microcosm here is really being paid with very much larger pieces. We talk about on a federal level the cost of Medicaid and Medicare. But really what we're talking about is the cost of healthcare insurance. At the state level, we can deal with it the way other states have. So I'm going to say that this is not there. And also, you spoke that talk to the regions. My understanding of civics is that the regions is a legislature, not the executive. Right?
It's up the assembly. Yes. You're right.
It's up the assembly. It's a joint, they join together the Senate and the Assembly to choose a region that's been nominated, all right? The difference is that when you put them both together, it's really the Assembly that dominates the vote and chooses the region.
Right. Well, the point I'm making is that if there was a will on the part of the bosses of the regions to change that, and a rule that they would have, it seems that that would happen. Does it get back in legislature?
Actually, but a lot of this comes back to, like I said before, when we enrolled in those federal programs, there's so many riders onto that. A lot of this testing, a lot of these standards come directly out of Race to the Top and No Child Left Behind. And unfortunately, that decision was made a while ago, and we're still collecting the money. As piddling as it is, it was a bad financial decision, but now our kids are paying for it. But if I can quickly say just a couple things. You know what? People have said, listen, there's a couple of mandates, and you're right. One of the biggest mandates that you guys have to deal with was the pension, and we've talked about that. Another one that people have said is medical costs and medical. Listen, that's a collectively bargained item. That's outside of my purview. It's outside of the state legislative purview. That's within the school district. That's a collectively bargained item.
So aren't the medical increases something that's mandated to us?
Yes, and they're up 27% this year.
Okay, wait.
It's 22%.
I'm sorry, but as far as I know, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Meeks, isn't medical a collectively bargained item within your contract?
It is. You're actually talking about two different things. You're correct, and you're correct, but it is a mandated part of bargaining. However, once it's part of the contract, then the increase goes.
Yeah, the increases as part of the collectively bargained contract. So that's outside my purview. But let me just say one thing real quick. The one thing that I have to tell you is, and unfortunately we've seen this in the last 2 or 3 years, a target, and we've talked about this before, a target of the current administration, unfortunately, has been the teacher. And we've seen it in the last couple of years. Teachers have been really unfairly targeted in the public opinion. And I would say this, and it continues this year too, because, listen, I already made my feelings clear about APPR and the lack of need for that here in Nassau and Suffolk. But another thing that you guys should be aware of is the fact that this governor wants to actually apply a bar exam to our teachers, which, again, that's going to be another cost somehow put on our school districts. And it's something that, again, in my opinion, it's another thing that we don't need our teachers to go through. And it's just something that we have to keep an eye on, that, you know what, we've got to stop looking to target somebody and to demonize them and start actually dealing with the problems like we talked about. And that's what we have to do. And we're trying to, with regards to the mandates and meetings, more of it's come down. And we're getting there, but it is late, and it should have been here last year when we instituted that.
Yeah, what's frustrating is that we all agree.
Sir, I don't want to cut you off, but we have a number of other people who want to be heard, so. Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, hi, my name is Elsia. I live on Criminal Court in Baldwin. About 16 years resident in Baldwin. I hear a lot of concern tonight about testing. And my question is to Dr. Page. I want to find out, how do you feel about, this concern about testing? At this point, want to invite Regent Hill into your school to kind of have a discussion with him?
Yeah, I certainly would have no problem inviting the school district for a meeting like this. We could ask him those questions. Personally, I think that I agree with Representative Curran. I think the testing is out of control in the state. We lose an incredible amount of instructional time because of tests that, for the most part, are meaningless. And that's the state of affairs right now.
But isn't that what drives the school? I mean, if you don't have testing, how will you evaluate,
Well,
progress of students?
there's testing that is valid testing, and then there's the testing that's foisted upon us that really is not very valid, because the state has a habit of changing the tests every 2 or 3 years, and you're provided with no longitudinal data. You have to have longitudinal data if you're going to make comparisons that have any validity. We don't have that with this testing system. It's a joke.
One Grove Street, Norfolk. Also a library trustee, so I'm going to take us a little off of education for just a second and go back to it. But it is along mandate, relief, and aid. From the library perspective, you've got the MTA tax, that's affecting the library still, and small businesses. What are we doing? We got 80% of it reduced. That is to Mr. Curran and to Ms. Holland. Where are we now with that legislation that was in the courts, and what's the latest result?
Thanks, Carl. You know what, the funny thing about it was in the courts, and actually Judge Phelan in Nassau County ruled the MTA tax unconstitutional, that it was done not prescribed to the way the state constitution required it to be done, and a tax being levied. So with regards to the current MTA tax, it's in limbo until we figure out. I think it was appealed, so it's sitting in appeal. With regards to the libraries themselves, last year, I know we fought for it and we got it. It was the first increase in library aid in over 5 years. It was actually a pretty good increase. I know you guys deserve another one this year, but again, what I can't tell you guys enough is, in the last 2 years of what we have done is clearing up our books, because we were in such a hole. We're getting to the point where we're actually almost even. And if we could just get this economy rolling again in the state, we would be beyond even. But our books are being cleared up.
Can I just get a quick rebuttal? May I?
Sure.
Just a quick one. All right. Now that it's in limbo, the problem I've got is my budget, I'm putting aside money for the MTA tax, with the promise that we can apply for it and get that money back. I could use that money for something else in the library, which is critical to this neighborhood, this community.
Carl, you're talking to the choir. You know what? I was
Just say it out loud.
Yeah. Now I was fighting to get the whole thing removed, and we were disappointed that the whole thing wasn't like that. You know what? Libraries are still included under it. It should have been like that. They should have been removed from it immediately with the other 80%, but it just wasn't. And we'll just keep fighting. I want the whole tax.
Gentlemen, go first.
Just Howard Batsford from Beach Street. I'd just like to talk a little bit against the tax cap, because it seems to me, I understand trying to control school taxes and school costs, but the tax cap doesn't do that. It doesn't do it directly. What it does is controls the amount of money available for schools. And so it's like the legislator trying to avoid all the tough decisions that the school districts have to make and other people have to make, and just say, you're going to have to figure out how to do it on less money, but we're going to restrict the amount of money available for it. So obviously, it's what we're going to talk about, mandates and other things. We've got to go directly to the cost of education. I mean, pensions, I don't know, should we go to a defined contribution system instead of the defined benefit system? I mean, all the businesses are doing that.
If I can,
Yeah.
you know what, that was actually introduced as part of the budget last year by the governor, that he was going to encourage a pension system that was split, part defined contribution where the retiree gets a defined amount of money every week, but a defined contribution is where they're out of that system, but they're into like a 401k where they determine where their money goes and they get their return. And they could make more than what the defined benefit is, but at the same time, it's important to realize that you could also lose money as well. It's just like any other 401 account. So it's something to look into, but unfortunately the legislature rejected the defined contribution. It's still a defined benefit. But if I can really just, you're right, but the tax cap wasn't an easy out for the legislature. What we were trying to do was balance the right of the district to self-determination, to make up their own minds. Listen, when I was running, the tax cap was still a theory, and it wasn't a law. And it had been prescribed, it had been introduced the year before, and 4% was being kicked around as the tax cap. And this governor came in and he said, listen, I want 2%, and I'm holding pat at that. And that's what he wanted, and that's what he got. And it's supposed to slow the rate. Now, just real quickly, but the one thing about it is, again, it has controlled, at least in my district, it has controlled the rate of increase. And it actually had decreased, at least in that first year. We'll have to see. But there still is, within the bill, the ability to override the cap. And if I have to just say, listen, you stated it very well. The tax cap does not cause any budget deficit. It does not. It limits a possible solution to solving that budget deficit. But the tax cap alone does not and cannot cause a budget deficit. It cannot. But what it does do is it prevents a possible solution, or at least limits it and allows a district to then figure out if they want to raise it above that tax levy and to override the cap.
Just add one thing on that. When the people go, when you all go to vote, when I go to vote on the budget, I'm voting on the levy, not the tax rate. I'm voting on the levy, all right? And so, budget passes, all the numbers are sent over to the assessor, and assessor comes out and says, well, we've had X number of surcharges. People going and having their taxes or their assessment low. Well, we've got to pay the schools, we've got to pay the government, something like that. So what we've got to do is we've got to raise the tax rate. And so this year, unfortunately, and I don't know if it happened in Walden or not, right? But some districts got hit hard with a double-digit tax rate. And so they were all yelling. They said, but we have a 2% tax cap, but that's on the levy. There's a difference between the levy and the tax rate.
Mary Jo O'Hagan, 391 Pennsylvania Avenue, report. I just want to make a comment and ask for your response relative to the tax cap. My aha moment was when the superintendent said, if my staff reduce their wages by 50%, we would only see that benefit for 1 year, because that resets the base on which a 2% cap will be placed in the succeeding year. So I see that as a game we can never win, no matter what reductions we make. We are simply resetting the base lower so that there is a lower, a lower potential increase each successive year. So mandate would be, yes, we would love to have it, but I see the only possibility is a constant high influx of state aid. That would be the only thing, because it's a game we can't possibly win. Whatever savings we make lowers the base on which we then calculate the next year's 2% cut or 2% cap cut. So I just want you to comment, how would we ever solve that?
Well, like I said, Mayor Joe, my whole point of actually voting for the tax cap is the belief that whatever revenue was lost by a school district with regards to the cap itself would be backfilled by state aid. And the belief that the 3-year period where the budget, our books were cleared up, would actually do that. And last year it began with a 4% increase. This year it's a little bit more than 4%, but the schools here at National Suffolk aren't seeing that much. And that's what we have to fight for, and that was the reason for the cap. And again, I understand the cap, listen, I can't say it enough, the cap was never presented as a panacea to the answer to everything. But if you then turn back to the problem that I talked about as foreclosure, it's a very real problem here. Last year, we were number 4 in Baldwin in foreclosures in Nassau County, which is the #1 county in New York State. And nobody can say that the rate of taxes that we pay for property taxes do not factor into that equation. It does. And it was talked about before about what it is to do with our kids when, for those 3 years. Well, but span it out for 3 more years. If the tax cap wasn't in place and we continued down that road, the foreclosure rate could theoretically increase and continue to increase at a point where our entire tax base for this school district is eroded to the point where we don't have any money, and we can't allow that. And I understand your point, I really do, and we spoke about it before. It is a problem, it is 2 problems that have to get addressed, and you're right. The only solution right now is to make sure that Nassau and Suffolk get an influx of aid to backfill the amount of money that you need to cover. But with that said, also, with regards to Baldwin, you had budget deficits before the tax cap. Every school district does. It's not inherent because of the tax cap. You had, it's just inherent in running of a big business, which is a school district. And you had to manage the tax cap. And again, like I said, the tax cap limits that solution of just raising taxes to cover that deficit. And I compliment you guys here in Baldwin. You've done a phenomenal job. But what I will say is last year we were successful in getting a huge amount of state aid back in after the governor's proposed budget. I want to do the same thing this year.
Misha Brown, South Twitter. It seems like there's always going to be this problem where we are constantly talking about the budget, we're cutting classes, we're saying, let's go to the 8-period day, which ultimately affects our children in terms of the arts, technology, and just everything like that. Has there ever been any talk about saying, okay, well, let's make Nassau County one school district and now pool our resources? Because when you look at other states, I taught in Maryland before. I worked in Montgomery County. Montgomery County is huge. We had all of these little subsets of schools, and it wasn't all of these problems that we seem to have now. We're going to continuously have this problem if we don't do something. So I have that.
And I'm sorry, I missed your first name.
Tanisha.
Tanisha, listen, you know what? You actually stated what we believe is the governor's main intent or desire to see for Nassau and Suffolk school districts. When he was the Attorney General, he had one piece of legislation that he put forward, and it was a consolidation bill. And you guys here in Baldwin know about that consolidation bill because you just experienced it with Stanley too. Basically what it is it allows districts or municipalities to consolidate or to dissolve into one or other districts. And that's been in effect, and it requires a specific process. But I'll tell you this. Listen, I grew up in Lynbrook. I still live in Lynbrook. When the consolidation bill was being discussed, I got an urgent call from the Rockland Center mayor. And she says, listen, you've got to get your robocalls out. You've got to tell your people they got to fight this. You've got to fight this because you know what? We're going to lose everything. We're going to lose our villages. We're going to be one big county. So we're going to lose our school district. We'll be one big school district just like New York City. And I said to her this. I said, as a person who's lived in Nassau County his whole entire life, I understand that there is a certain set of pride in both the municipality, in your school district. There's a certain set of pride in knowing your garbage man that comes and picks up your garbage and puts your can in the back of your house, which is exactly why Sandy, too, who did a good job, didn't get dissolved. I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, sorry. Well, you guys passed it anyway. But my point being this, what I said to the Rockville Center mayor is this. If there should ever come a time that there is a petition to dissolve any of this, and it gets passed, which I don't believe it will ever happen because of the pride in that district, in that school district, in that municipality, then we deserve to get dissolved. And you know what? The procedure is there. But I'm telling you, I like my school district. I like my municipality. I like knowing that I can go down to talk to a mayor or a town councilman or a county legislator. I like that fact. And listen, as the lady said, you moved here because of the school districts and because of the area itself. And you know what? I believe that the quality of education and the quality of living would decrease a little if we went to a bigger district, either school, municipality. And I understand there's been success stories, but there have also been non-success stories as well. And I would just say, if you're asking me, the process is there, and there is grants out there to incentivize doing that, and it is available to the people to do that. I would be surprised if it ever succeeds.
George?
What's your I want to take exception on your making connection between property tax cap and foreclosures. Foreclosures have not been slowed down because of the property tax. First of all, foreclosures were a consequence of predatory lending practices by the banks, which impacted greatly on people of color. So the idea that because of property taxes, foreclosures have been slow, I really can't accept that. I think that what happened with the foreclosures slowing down is that people, the federal government and others are moving towards the banks to stop and to do modifications and other things. And I don't believe that it had anything to do with property taxes.
Okay, and that's fair. But I will say this. I'm a homeowner. And you know what? If you ever want to see a grown man cry, come around when I'm writing my check for my taxes. It's about $10,000, $11,000. I'm not exactly sure. And like I said, I disagree with the assertion that if you're paying a mortgage and you have to pay an additional $10,000 and you're barely making your mortgage, how you can argue that additional $10,000 or $12,000 on your taxes does not affect the foreclosure rate. It is an added cost that the homeowner has to bear, and if they can't bear it, then they're going to lose their home. So that's the only reason why I make the equation. I'll let the people decide. You know what? They all write checks too. And like I said, for a person scraping by to barely make their mortgage, when they're faced with another $6,000 bill on top of the taxes, and they can't make it, I don't know how somebody argues that that's not part of the equation.
Let me add another avenue on this. Businesses have been moving out of New York State. And the reason they've been moving out of New York State is because our taxes. The taxes are high. They can go to other states and it's a lot cheaper. I mean, that's the bottom line here. So what we have to do is make New York State more attractive. We have to be more attractive for the small business people. They're the glue. They're like the middle class people. They're the glue that keeps this country going. And so what New York State has been doing for the last 2 years has been able to start investing and attracting businesses back into New York. That's what we've got to do. We've got to. And taxes are a very important piece. They really are. I mean, many of my friends have moved to North Carolina. You might as well go to North Carolina and you can see all the people from New York.
You have some questions on this side? Pam?
Mariana Fraser Schultz from 863 Parkway. My question, I didn't know who I was going to address, but I guess it would be you, Ms. Holly. But if you look at Baldwin, when I first moved here, and I teach in New York City, but I live in Baldwin, and I chose Baldwin because it was so beautiful. Family-oriented, schools top of the line in the country, and you drive down Grand Avenue and the whole strip mall is empty. There are no businesses there. They haven't been there for years, and we have to go outside of Baldwin to shop and spend our money instead of spending our money right here. We don't have anything that can attract people to Baldwin to spend their money, but we're going everywhere else to spend ours. What has happened to our businesses here, and how are we going to get some back?
Not as if I don't have enough state questions to answer, but I'm going to answer a town question because I left Mr. Santino. He's at a town hall meeting in Oceanside. Basically, one of the biggest projects is the Grand Avenue project down between Merrick and Sunrise. And you guys know the history of that. There's been two developers there that went by the wayside and didn't develop the property. Over the summer, they actually entered into an agreement with a third developer. I'm trying to remember, it's a big construction firm. They should be setting that project for the plans very shortly, and hopefully this developer will get a new project done, bringing new businesses down to Grand Avenue. That's what you need down there. And like I said, you're absolutely right. Baldwin's been getting killed lately with regards to the downtown projects, along with the closure of the first precinct. It's you know what? Like I said, you're at the end of the tunnel. There's going to be work being done on the town project. I feel good about the new developer, and I think it's going to happen.
You had one opportunity. Let me just see if there's anyone else. Anyone else who hasn't asked a question? Who wants to have one?
Teresa Racklin, 971 Road. Someone had mentioned regarding the testing, the overtest. And I'm just sitting here as a thought, because I've seen a lot of stuff with middle school parents opting out. I'm just kind of wondering what the cost difference would be if the school district opted out. How much would we lose in aid versus how much would we gain in not having the teachers, with all the time and the places providing, et cetera. What are the numbers? Can we opt out? Is that an option? Can we opt out of the extra the testing?
Your question is directed towards who?
Whoever, I don't know.
Any takers?
We as a school district, we can't opt out of the testing. We're a public school. We have to follow the mandates of the state education department. Individual parents, of course, can and have opted out of the testing. There is a potential penalty for school district.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. But is it a hefty penalty? Like, what if, because social media is so big now, what if we just all decided to opt our kids out? I mean, I don't have kids who are in middle or elementary, but what if that happened? And there was no one to take the test. What happens then?
Well, it certainly produces a number of mistakes. And neither would we.
I'm just kind of wondering what the numbers are. Money-wise.
Otherwise, I don't know.
I would love to know that, because if it's nominal,
Boy, we got a campaign, that can happen.
I know you can.
Okay, in front.
Michelle Kuberg, so I know you were talking about taxes and incentives. So the town, I think, makes those decisions, right? In New York City, they had a big project at MetroTech in Brooklyn where they gave tax incentives to companies that would come and bring their business to Lower Manhattan. And a lot of companies, including mine, moved down there, and it became a bustling place. It just changed the whole face of the neighborhood. It's now very productive, and a lot of people pay a lot of money to live there. So why can't the town do some kind of tax incentive so that people can come into the town and fill the empty stores that are not a part of the project between Merrick and Sunrise? There are many other stores that have been sitting empty. There's, the Denny's on Atlantic Avenue has been gone for years, and nobody has moved in there. We have, you know, people coming in and moving out because nobody shops here. Why can't we do any kind of a tax incentive?
I'll take the town question, yes. They do. Actually, the project that I just talked to you about is through the IDA. The IDA program is run through the town of Hempstead. They do offer tax incentives, everything from construction costs to actually tax, you know, a reduction in taxes for a period of time after the project is built. What's that?
Pilots.
Yeah, pilots and through the IDA. They do offer that. And, you know, it takes the person to apply for the project. So the town offers it, and the actual person building the project applies for it. And it's then approved.
But what about little bit other storefronts that are not part of the big project? I mean, why can't the town itself give a tax incentive so that businesses can come in, because there are so many businesses that are not.
Right, I'll talk to them to find out if there's something in place already.
Darren in the back.
Hi, good evening. Van White, 35 Ford Court, letter to PTA. Let me get something clear. You can opt out of that test.
Oh,
You can opt out of that test. Okay. Now, if my son class 2L, all the parents opt out, what would the teacher be teaching? Would it still be teaching to the test, or she have to change, or he has to change curriculum?
No, he's still teaching the standard
Curriculum. They wouldn't be teaching to the test.
They won't be teaching to the test. When can you put in for that opt-out? Because I was at a state region with Roger Telly's 2 years ago, and he's against the testing. So if he's against the testing, you're against the testing, you're against the testing, the kids against the testing, why are we testing?
If we don't need the money, what are we accomplishing?
Oh, so he's only one person in the region, so we have to change.
But you have other regions that also go to the testing, all right? Roger Tillis only represents this area.
Yes.
And then you have many other regions that represent the whole entire state of Illinois. So Roger Tillis has 110.
And if I could just say, just not on the testing, but it was also brought up in the context of this question, like the APPR and the implementation. I don't know about the testing penalty, but what I can tell you about the penalty for the APPR, you guys probably have seen it with regards to New York City. The governor held an act over every school district that said that if you didn't pass these standards, because the state already took the federal money, so they were on the hook. If you didn't pass these standards of evaluating teachers, he said that the school district, Baldwin, would lose every amount of increased aid that you got last year, which I believe, if I remember correctly, somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000. You would lose that if you didn't take that. You were forced to take a bad piece of legislation, and then they held money over your head to make sure you did it.
How is that legal?
Because
I know that Assemblyman Curran brought up the cost of implementing the act. For Baldwin, it has cost us over $270,000 to implement APPR. And we don't really feel that the return on our investment has been what would be acceptable on Wall Street. And we don't think we have the same evaluation, the same quality of evaluation that we had prior to the So it's not, it's certainly not a win-win situation.
I'm sorry. I had asked during my remarks if there was a plan to reimburse districts for the zoning course that were put out to implement APPR. And I don't remember if Mr. Curran gave an answer to that.
no, and I didn't, and let me give you the answer, no. You know what, and you should be. I put in a bill last year. You're not going to get, basically, as I had said before, this actually came out of taking federal money, and I I believe, I know some of the costs, but I don't know Baldwin's costs. But for, say, something like Race to the Top, I believe it cost Lynbrook to implement a PPR around $125,000. For Race to the Top, they did $17,000. So the entire deal was bad, and I'm sure the numbers are similar to Baldwin, if not worse. But what we did was, you should get your money back, but if you're not, because we are still in a hole, what you should be getting at the very least is an offset to that cost. If we're going to constrain you under a tax cap, let's loosen the cap because of this extra cost that we told you to do and made you do. So to answer your question, no, you're not going to get reimbursed for it, but what you can do is try to apply pressure to make sure that they loosen the cap for some of these costs. That no matter, and I love elected officials, because I was sitting at a PTA meeting with all the superintendents last year, and another legislator that I was sitting next to, it was 25 minutes of people saying, give us mandate relief, give us mandate relief. And this legislator, and I love him, he got up and he says, listen, I'm very proud of the fact that I make schools put in defibrillators. And people started clapping. And I guess that really sums it up, because here's the thing, defibrillators cost money. And if you're going to tell your school districts to have defibrillators, that's another unfunded mandate. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but my point being, somebody's unfunded mandate is good, another person's unfunded mandate is bad. And it's hard to say that all unfunded mandates are bad. But just make sure that you hold people's feet to the fire. Listen, let's stop unfunded mandates. Let's put a cap on us up at the state legislature that we can't pass anything more than $10,000 down to our districts without a supermajority or something like that. There's bills out there. Put it on us to stop us from doing it. And that's what I would say.
We're going to take it's 9:30. We're going to final question.
I just have one question to Mr. Kerr and Ms. Polly. We thank you for being here tonight to everyone. But I just have a question. Erwin Cooper is one of the most powerful politicians in Albany right now, who's part of the Long Island Mandate. Senator Skelos is one of the most powerful in the Senate right now, all part of our delegation. What exactly is being planned for Baltimore? We have powerful people who are in places of committee where we can get something done. We're grateful about on the other end, but something needs to be done on this end. Down from this end down to the Long Island Railroad, and also remember our school district. We want our area to look just as good as Rockville Center, and we want that relayed to Ms. Hooper, Sheldon Silver, Senator Skelos, and everyone in Albany. We want what we have paid into, our state. Give us some funding. Give us something that we can say, wow, they're really looking out for us. So I just wanted to ask, what is on the horizon from our elected officials in the state for Baltimore?
And thank you, but let me just say this. This fight over state aid has been going on for years. And I will tell you this, both Arlene and Dee, every single year, I don't know how they do it, but they're successful. All of us are successful in getting money back to our districts, and that's some. And listen, you're right. We have to start working on mandate relief. The mandate relief really wasn't a big topic until this tax cap came through. And you know what? The budget flexibility shrunk, and all of a sudden, the school districts needed that flexibility. But my point being is, those two individuals have been instrumental in making sure, along with Senator Fischilla, making sure that the districts within the South Shore of Long Island have always gotten more money back from whatever governor has been in there and has shortchanged that for the subject. So I just wanted to tell you that.
All right, may I also answer that? You've got what we call the Long Island Nine. Many of you people have heard it. You've got 9 senators here on Long Island who are Republicans. They can hold other bills. They can. They fight as a group. And this has been going on, I think some of you have been around here for many years, and years and years. And then we have the counterparts in the Assembly who also join with the fight. You would not be getting the state aid, and I've been around now close to 30 years on the old guard. You would not be getting the state aid that you're getting and have gotten over the years without having the Long Island Nine and the Assembly people joining us. It's a powerful force. Right now, we've had tough times, and some of them talked about it. 2 years ago, we were over $10 billion in the hole. In the hole, the state. And everybody decided we gotta get our act together. Thank heavens. And so what they did, they cut right across the board and hurt everybody. We're now recovering. We're now starting to recover, and that's good. And that was called control through spending for the state. But you're long line senators, I can speak for the Senate, right? You can speak for the Assembly. But they joined together with the Assembly, and we are a powerful force.
Thank you. We would like to thank our invited guest speakers from the town of Hempstead, Nassau County Legislature, the New York State Senate, and the New York State Assembly. We'd like to thank the school district, you the parents, and community members present here tonight for your interest in our schools and our community. A special thanks to the Baldwin High School's custodians who assisted us in preparing the room for this evening. Once again, thanks to all of you, and remember, we're working together for our children. It's up to you to make a difference both collectively and individually. Have a good night and get home safe.